Hey guys, welcome back to Wentworth Life, the channel that talks all things Wentworth. If you are new to the channel, then please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as it really helps us out on the channel. Okay then, so we are now on to Wentworth Season 3, Episode 4, and I just have to say, I always remember this episode being absolutely fantastic. I friggin' love this episode, guys. The episode begins in a dark, strange place where a man is thrown from a van and beaten up very badly by an anonymous group of people. Now, we all know that this group is indeed the Red Right Hand, and the guy who is being beaten up is a guy called Jimmy, who is indeed Narelle Stang's brother, who appears in the show in Season 7. However, when we watched Season 3 way back for the very first time, we never knew any of this, but it's always interesting watching these scenes when you go back and rewatch the show and seeing it at a different perspective. In the dining room now, and Liz is making herself a cup of tea with Juicy Lucy. This is the moment where we learn that Juice is infected with hepatitis C, and I can remember that all of the Wentworth fans, including myself, were a little bit concerned that maybe Frankie might have caught it from Juice, but it was never really revealed if she had it or if she didn't have it, so I'm gonna go with that Frankie didn't catch it. However, learning about Juice's Hep C status will play a bigger part later on in the season. Jodie Spiteri is released from the slot, and it's not looking great after her nightmare with freaky Joan Ferguson, and it doesn't go unnoticed by a lot of the women, especially Frankie. There is a scene where Frankie goes to see Jodie during the night time while Jodie is asleep, but Jodie thinks that it's Joan Ferguson for a split moment, and it's actually quite creepy. When Frankie asks Jodie what the hell did Joan do to her in the slot, Jodie just says that she didn't do anything to her. I mean, Frankie doesn't believe any of it, but Jodie does tell Frankie that it was B who set them both up with the drugs. B is not happy with this when she finds out, and she goes looking for Jodie, and Jodie is actually in the medical at this stage of the episode being checked over, and when Jodie sees Joan Ferguson, Jodie ends up wetting herself. Like, what the hell? To be that scared of just seeing someone to the point of peeing yourself, it just makes you wonder, what the hell did Joan Ferguson really do to Jodie? B sees what happens, and she ends up taking Jodie to the shower block to get cleaned up with Maxine, and this is when B comes really close to giving Jodie a smack in the face for lagging to Frankie. Now, I know B was very tough in this season, but I did really feel bad for Jodie in this episode. She was getting it from all angles, and I know, B had no idea what Joan had been doing to Jodie at this stage, but it was still hard to watch. Liz's world is literally comes crashing down around her in this episode. So Liz knows something bad has happened to Sophie on the outside, but Kay isn't telling Liz anything. So there is this awesome scene in the yard where Liz speaks to Joan through the fence, asking Joan, or telling Joan, that she needs to get in touch, with her daughter to find out what's happened, but Joan refuses, basically saying something along the lines of that we don't run errands for prisoners, we don't do things like that, and this is when Liz loses her temper and she ends up raising her voice, and then Liz starts shouting and saying that she will rip this fucking fence down, and she then ends up getting dragged away to the slot, and I just love this moment when Liz loses it at Joan. Joan was being a total bitch to Liz in my opinion, and I totally agree with Liz's actions. But ending up in the slot is the least of Liz's concern, because basically an officer comes to get Liz in the middle of the night, I think it is anyway, and he ends up bringing Liz to the induction room where we see daughter Sophie crouched down in the corner of the room in one hell of a mess, and Vera needs Liz to calm her down for the strip search. Just look at Liz's face. I was honestly shocked when I first saw this scene. I had no idea that Sophie was going to end up in prison as an inmate. It didn't even cross my mind that this was going to happen. So I loved seeing this for the very first time. Liz ends up released from the slot in order to help daughter Sophie settle into the prison, and this is when we learn that Sophie has actually run down a man and killed him while under the influence of alcohol. Oh shit. This just isn't, this isn't some sort of like drunken disorderly. Sophie has actually killed someone. I was not expecting it when I first saw this. Now, during the episode, Liz introduces Sophie to all of the women, and Maxine, oh I love Maxine, she, helps Sophie feel welcome. Now, Sophie spends this whole episode being scared stupid by some of the more rougher inmates of the prison. It all comes to a head though when Juice and her crew, they end up attacking Liz and Sophie in the shower block. Now, Juice is about to rape Sophie right in front of her mother, Liz. That is until when Frankie comes bursting in armed with a mop. And Frankie literally just turns into this amazing ninja. She ends up taking out all of Juice's crew before beating the crap out of Juicy Lucy. It's such a great scene. It's one of my all-time favourite Frankie Doyle moments ever. Now, I can remember thinking that maybe, just maybe, this is going to be a nice little bridge for Frankie and Liz to start repairing their friendship, because, things haven't been very great between them ever since the whole Liz lagging on Frankie incident. But when Liz goes to see Frankie to say thank you, Sophie is in Frankie's cell getting drunk on home brew, and Liz ends up saying to Frankie, "Fuck you," in a real deep Lizzie voice. Just look at Frankie's face. Frankie really enjoyed doing that to Liz, and it seems like to me that bridges will not be getting built just yet. Joan ends up getting the shock of her life when she ends up pulling Nurse Rose into the office to try and find out what's going on with Will's investigation. Basically, Joan wants to try and shit stir between their relationship, and Rose ends up telling Joan that Will has been to see Mr. Fletcher and they have sorted everything out. Joan is gobsmacked, and she is left wondering whether if Fletcher has actually told Will everything about what he found out back at the end of season 2. So Joan goes to visit Fletcher just to, assess the situation. Fletcher tells Joan that he remembers her and that they didn't get on, but that's all that he can really remember. Now, Joan plays it down, telling Fletcher that it was just down to a work personality clash, but it was nothing serious. But Joan is about to receive another shock because Fletcher ends up telling Joan that Vera has been coming to visit him. So when Joan confronts Vera about it back at the prison, Vera ends up apologising, but Joan doesn't let Vera off the hook too easily during this scene. The scene between them in the governor's office is really intense, and you really see the manipulation that Joan has over Vera in this scene. Vera is literally Joan's puppet, and it's really hard to believe when you know just how much stronger Vera is going to become in later seasons, but it's still a very interesting scene. Someone ends up doing the unthinkable to B. Smith when B is secretly shaved in the yard during a basketball game. It happens during a moment where a small disagreement between a few of the women turns into a very minor brawl that ends up knocking pregnant Doreen over. Thankfully, Doreen is fine, but B isn't. When the women see that B has a very nasty slash on her back, it turns out that Joan Ferguson used Jodie to do it. Another one of Joan's puppets, this time done through fear. And B is not happy, but Jodie ends up telling B that she just didn't have a choice. The freak forced her to do it. Now, B saw that Jodie had wet herself earlier on in the episode, so B now knows that Joan has done something really bad to Jodie, but more will be revealed on that front in the next episode. The episode ends when a TV report comes onto the TV with all of the women watching, and even Will is watching from home. That anonymous group that beat up the man at the start of the episode, well, the leader of the gang ends up coming onto the screen saying that they are dealing with men who abuse women and basically get away with it, and it's all being done in the name of their hero, B. Smith. This completely shocks B, but something clicks into place for her when she ends up grabbing a letter that she received in an earlier episode. A letter from the amazing Kaz Proctor, who, as we know, is in charge of the Red Right Hand, and the letter even states that she would love to come and visit B. B is, of course, shocked and probably a little bit confused at what the hell is going on, but I absolutely loved the ending of this episode. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really well done. It added this new layer of storyline that none of us expected. I was so friggin' excited to see the next episode. I also have to mention Will, because he isn't having a great time in this episode either, because the police, they end up bursting into his flat with a warrant to seize his goods and to do a search of the house. This starts to cause some stress between his relationship with Nurse Rose, but who did kill Harry Smith? Was it Will? Was it Joan? Or was it the Red Right Hand? I think at the time when I first saw it, I was thinking it might have been the Red Right Hand, but there were so many mysteries and unanswered questions. It was all very exciting. This was such a fantastic episode. I think my favourite part definitely has to be Ninja Frankie saving poor Liz and Sophie. And my least favourite part of this episode would have to be B being shivved. I do not like seeing my Queen Bee being slashed in the back. That is not okay. But now let's hear some of your thoughts. What did you think of this episode when you watched it for the first time? And what were your favourite moments and your least favourite moments? Let me know everything, guys, in the comments box below. Okay then, guys, well, we have reached the end of today's video. Thank you all for stopping by and watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Stay safe out there, and I will see you all again very, very soon.